Hello, my name is James Gibson, and I'd like to speak to you tonight on a subject that has fascinated me for many years, and that is the overthrow of the Tsar in 1917 and the ensuing seizure of power by the communists. Now, you may be wondering how this is relevant to us today in the 21st century. Well, it's relative for many reasons. I'll enumerate two very quickly. Number one, it's relevant because there are still regimes in operation today that are carbon copies of what I'm about to explain to you. North Korea, for example, still practice this kind of slavery, this kind of barbarity. Cuba, which is only 90 miles off the coast of Florida, consequently, still practices this kind of slavery in the 21st century. And Venezuela, as a matter of fact, embraces this collectivization mentality that is so dangerous. But let me back up and give you a little bit of background on Russia in 1917. Russia in 1917 was ruled by Tsar Nicholas II and his royal family, but really Tsar Nicholas II and his ministers. You can see their family here. He had 4 daughters and 1 young son, Alexei. After the communists took power, they arrested the Tsar and his family, and they lined him up for a photograph, much like this, in a basement in a house in Ekaterinburg, and shot every one of them, shot them dead. So it was a brutal, brutal venture from the very beginning. The way the revolution came about was the Tsar had involved Russia in World War I for no good reason at all, and had sacrificed thousands, if not millions, of the flower of Russia's youth into industrialized warfare. And when I say industrialized warfare, I mean machine guns, bombs, mortars. These are things that were used for the first time in history in World War I. And everything that was made in Russia was sent to the front. So the people at home were going hungry. They were starving and cold. So they took to the streets. And the army, after 4 years of this slaughter, was tired of the war themselves. So they took the side of the people and joined the revolution. Now, there had been many groups, political groups, that had been advocating and fighting for and killing for the abolition of the monarchy, one of which was the Russian Social Democrat Labor Party, or the Bolshevik faction of that party, headed by Vladimir Ilyich Lenin. The overthrow of the Tsar resulted in the institution of a provisional government, which lasted only a few months before Lenin's socialist Bolsheviks seized power from the provisional government. And they promised the people land, peace, and bread. And it was easy for them because the provisional government was still trying to continue the war. So Lenin said basically that you are supporting a government that is continuing the policy of the Tsar, and what you need is land, peace, and bread. And the people ate it up, bought it. Well, Lenin and his Bolsheviks seized power, and this resulted in a civil war that lasted for 4 years, from 1918 to 1922, in which the communists were ultimately victorious. But what they inherited was a devastated country. So Lenin, being a superlative improviser, instituted what he called the new economic policy, or the NEP, which introduced a modicum of capitalism back into the Russian economy, because upon taking power, the Bolsheviks had outlawed the free market of any kind under penalty of death. They outlawed capitalism, buying and selling or trading. They outlawed private property. They killed landowners. They killed former ministers, former aristocrats, who they called the bourgeoisie. They killed them and sent them to labor camps and worked them to death. The result was pretty much the same. So he Lenin and the communists introduced the free market, kind of, under the new economic policy. Well, Lenin died 2 years later in 1924, and Stalin, seen standing next to the casket here, grasped the mantle of leadership after Lenin died. And with good reason, because they were bosom buddies. Stalin had been the closest to Lenin after the socialists took power in Russia, and even before they took power in Russia. And as I said, they had immediately abolished the free market or trading of any kind under penalty of death. But Lenin had instituted the new economic policy, like I said, that introduced a modicum of capitalism into the free market. But when Stalin took power, Stalin ripped the new economic policy up and instituted collective farms. And he did this with a major propaganda barrage. And he also mobilized 25,000 indoctrinated young party members to go out into the countryside and herd these farmers onto these farms at the point of a gun, telling them they'll either produce or they'll die. Now, they used class warfare to, as well, as this caption reads, "We'll keep kulaks," which means tight fist in Russian, off the collected farms. And tight fist, they mean, won't let go of their money, won't let go of their property, stuff like that. It was a derogatory term. This is the result, this is the effect of class warfare. Over 10 million people died in Russia as a result of collectivization. Some journalists told the truth to the world, but not many. It's kind of like today, isn't it? This is the ultimate result of collectivism.